The night air over Crystal Lake carried a sharp chill, the kind that seeped into the bones. Moonlight rippled across the dark water, broken only by the faint splash of oars. Then came the sound, heels striking the dock, fast and furious, each step like a warning. A woman's voice cut through the silence, commanding strangers to leave. But here's the truth she never expected. This lake, this entire stretch of shimmering water, did not belong to the HOA she claimed to control. It belonged to one man, and she had just challenged the wrong heir. But how do you destroy a woman who has already fooled an entire community into believing she owned it all? Millbrook, Wisconsin, a quiet town where every lawn is trimmed, every mailbox painted, and every gossip thread runs deeper than the lake itself. Crystal Lake had long been the crown jewel of this community, a glassy expanse stretching into thick forests, where families fished, children swam, and summer festivals once brought the town together. But time had chipped away at those traditions. When Marcus Thornfield inherited his late grandfather's estate, he walked into a neighborhood ruled by something else, fear. The self-appointed queen of this order was Brenda Hutchinson, the HOA president. She claimed Crystal Lake fell under her jurisdiction, imposing fees on anyone who dared to dip their paddle. Families who resisted faced threats, fines, even liens on their homes. The neighborhood had grown silent, the shoreline stripped of laughter. What remained was control, tight, suffocating, profitable. Brenda thrived on it, but Marcus's grandfather, a man who once swore the lake would never be chained, left behind more than memories. He left secrets buried in paper, legal, ironclad, waiting for the right moment to surface. And the moment Brenda tried to drive Marcus's guests from his own dock, that fuse was finally lit. Marcus Thornfield was no stranger to loss. His grandfather's passing had left him with grief as heavy as the pinewood beams of the old estate. Yet stepping into that house overlooking the lake, he felt something else, a charge of responsibility. Marcus was quiet, reserved, the type of man who noticed details others missed. The groan of dock planks, the faint scent of mildew in the boathouse, the careful folds in his grandfather's files. But under that calm exterior lived a stubborn streak, a refusal to bow to bullies. Brenda Hutchinson was the opposite. She thrived in spectacle. With manicured nails and a clipboard always tucked under her arm, she moved through Millbrook like a storm. Neighbors whispered about her tactics, forged letters, secret special assessments, and threats that bled into intimidation. To many, she was untouchable. To Marcus, she was a fraud in pearls. What she never knew, Marcus's grandfather had placed Crystal Lake into a conservation trust, legally untouchable by any HOA scheme. And Marcus had just uncovered the proof. But before justice could surface, Brenda planned one final con, big enough to drown the entire town in her lies. It began with whispers of development. Brenda told the community that a luxury marina would soon rise along Crystal Lake. She claimed exclusive rights, promising premium lake access to those willing to pay her inflated fees. Those who resisted, their property values would plummet, or so she threatened. Flyers appeared in mailboxes overnight. A map, neatly printed, showed bold red lines around parcels Marcus knew belonged to him. His stomach tightened. These were not just rumors. Brenda was carving up land that never belonged to her. In the dusty attic of the Thornfield estate, Marcus sifted through his grandfather's files. And there it was, the trust documents. Yellowed pages, notarized, binding. Crystal Lake was protected, not just for Marcus, but for generations of the town. Brenda's HOA claims held no legal ground. Marcus's mind raced. Confrontation would not be enough. Brenda needed exposure. She needed the truth dragged into the open, where no intimidation could cover it. And so he planned. The annual town summer gathering, a tradition Brenda had hijacked years ago, would return. Only this time, Marcus would host it on his land. He called it the Crystal Lake Festival. Neighbors hesitated at first, afraid of Brenda's wrath. But one by one, they came forward. Families tired of paying false fees, parents desperate for their children to enjoy the lake without fear. Marcus's quiet determination began to ripple through Millbrook, uniting voices long silenced. What Marcus did not know was that Brenda had already crossed a line that could not be erased. Wire transfers, forged signatures, and a federal trail leading straight back to her door. The festival began under golden light, the lake sparkling like a promise reborn. Children raced along the shoreline, vendors set up stalls, and neighbors breathed for the first time in years without Brenda's shadow looming overhead. But Brenda arrived. Her heels clicked across the dock like gunshots. Clipboard in hand, voice sharp as broken glass, she demanded the crowd disperse. She shouted that the event was illegal, that Marcus had no right to host it, that Crystal Lake was under her control. Then Marcus stepped forward, documents in hand. His voice carried steady across the water. This land, this lake, it's mine. He lifted the trust papers for all to see. Gasps spread like wildfire. Years of fear shattered in seconds. Brenda's face drained as federal investigators moved from the crowd. They had been tipped off. Her fraudulent development funds traced across state lines. Her fake HOA registrations already documented. She tried to grab the papers from Marcus, her voice cracking, but cameras flashed. Witnesses stared. The Queen had no throne left. And then it happened. In her fury, Brenda shoved past a vendor, knocking over a table. Glass shattered. Children cried. The festival turned tense. And that was when the federal agents moved in. Her wrists snapped into cuffs, her clipboard falling into the dirt. But her downfall was not just in the arrest. It was in the secrets that poured out once the investigation began. The courtroom buzzed like a hive. Stacks of evidence towered higher than Brenda's arrogance. Wire fraud, forged signatures, illegal liens, even federal mail tampering. Neighbors who once trembled now stood as witnesses. They spoke of intimidation, of money stolen under false pretenses, of sleepless nights, wondering if their homes would be taken. Each word struck Brenda like a hammer. Marcus sat quietly, conservation trust documents locked in his hands like a shield. His grandfather's legacy was no longer a fading memory. It was a weapon of truth. When the verdict came, it was thunderous. Guilty. Multiple felonies. Restitution ordered. Prison inevitable. Brenda's reign had ended not with applause, but with silence. The silence of a community finally free. But Marcus's next move would prove this was more than revenge. It was renewal. Marcus refused to let Crystal Lake become just another crime scene memory. Using the Conservation Trust, he established a community council dedicated to preserving the lake. Access was restored, not for profit, but for families. Festivals returned, laughter echoing once more across the shoreline. The funds seized from Brenda's fraudulent accounts were redirected into scholarships, park maintenance, and neighborhood safety programs. Children who once feared the HOA's grip now played freely in waters their grandparents had loved. And Marcus, he became not just an heir, but a guardian. He honored his grandfather's wish that the lake would remain untouchable, a sanctuary against greed. Brenda, meanwhile, sat behind cold bars, her name a warning rather than a threat. The woman who claimed control lost everything because she picked the wrong target, the judge's grandson armed with the truth. And as the sun set over Crystal Lake, one question lingered. How many more communities are still trapped under the shadow of their own false kings and queens? Have you ever fought an HOA tyrant? Share your story in the comments, because your voice might be the one that saves someone else's home.